Good evening. Welcome to WSBI, your resource for success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. And now, for your host, Kimberly McLemore.
All right, good evening, and welcome to WSBI, your Resource for Success podcast program, where you get to meet inspiring women-owned businesses from across the country. I am your host, Kimberly McLemore, but welcome to a special edition of tonight's show. With us, we have Brian J. Olds, president and founder of Black Speakers Network, BSN. Brian J. Olds wasn't born with a natural enthusiasm for public speaking. A burgeoning change agent in the industry, the Baltimore native inadvertently entered into the world of speaking when he delivered his first speech to the Morgan State University Toastmasters Club in 2006. Recalling this as one of his most defining life moments, Brian instantly connected to his passion when he found himself in front of a standing ovation at the conclusion of that speech. Identified as a curator of collaboration, Brian specializes in empowering rising professional speakers to create clarity, streamline systems, and cultivate the relationships needed to reach the unique audience they are called to serve. His passion for speaking, diversity, and building relationships led him to create Black Speakers Network, a membership-based professional speaker development and empowerment association. With thousands of members around the world, BSN holds the distinction of being the most accessible and fastest-growing development organization dedicated to serving underrepresented speakers at all levels in their career. With a deep appreciation for the artistry of speaking at the helm of his career, Brian J. Olds is defining success on his own terms. His impact is illustrated perfectly in industry mate Zig Ziglar's quote, "It's not where you start, it's where you finish that counts." So without further ado, help me welcome to my platform, Brian J. Olds. How you doing, sir?
Hello. I am doing excellent, Kimberly. Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and I'm extremely excited about you being on the show tonight. We have a lot to talk about and have a lot to learn about you beyond what we already know. So why don't you take a couple minutes, though, and tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Absolutely. And so I think, the bio that you started off with does a good job of kind of introducing, but the story behind that is that, and if for those listeners haven't had an opportunity to meet, I am from Baltimore. I'm proud native of Baltimore, Maryland. And so the thing that you should know about me is that I'm a born introvert, Kimberly. And so if there are any other absolutely. And I have receipts. I also have examples to back that up. But that ties into kind of this story, which is, if you had been sitting next to me at Morgan State University in the summer of 2006 in a small classroom, you would have watched as I stood up, walked to the front of the room, and delivered my very first speech in an organization called Toastmasters. Now, Kimberly, are you familiar with Toastmasters?
I am. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sure you have. Most of your listeners are as well. But for those who haven't, Toastmasters is a public speaking and leadership organization. It's been around since 1924. And so this was the very first meeting in my junior year at Morgan State University. And I was the very first speaker. And so here I am, scared out of my mind. The reason I joined and signed up in the first place was because, being an introvert, I'd always had this fear of public speaking, as many people do, and I really saw this as an opportunity to get over that. And so had you been sitting in that classroom, probably on the front row, you would have seen my sweaty palms. They were as I tried to grip the paper nervously. You would have heard my shaking voice. At one point, I think I almost walked out of the room because I was pacing, going back and forth so much. But I got through the speech, and I realized a couple things. Number one, I was still alive, which was great. That was my number one fear, is that I was going to go into cardiac arrest. Then the second thing I realized is that everyone in the room was clapping, giving a round of applause. And that made me feel good at the time. And then later on, I realized that Toastmasters, if you ever go to a Toastmasters club, it's kind of like church. We pretty much clap for everything. So if you bring your lunch to the meeting, like, you're getting a round of applause. But if it made me feel good at the time. And then the third thing I realized, which was most important, Kimberly, is that I just survived my first presentation. And what I realized in that moment is that if I can survive one presentation and deliver it, I could deliver two. And that's what I did. And then two turned into four, four turned into 10. I went on to start speaking outside of Toastmasters. I eventually went into corporate America, moved into corporate finance, training and development, diversity and inclusion. I started my own workshops and seminars in the Baltimore area. And the thing that I realized through that is that I absolutely love speaking. But one of the things I enjoy even more than that is helping speakers, even if they don't necessarily yet self-identify with the term speaker, but connecting people with an authentic voice and a message with the audience that they're called to serve. And so that realization was the genesis of Black Speakers Network, and that was in 2016.
Wow. It sounds phenomenal, but the thing that stood out to me most is that you talked a lot about the Toastmasters Club, and then of course that 2006 moment. What did you say in that speech that really turned everybody on? I mean, you're scared, like I said, you're pacing back and forth, and all of a sudden your mouth opens and you start to speak. What was the defining moment for you and for the listeners and the audience that were out there?
Oh yeah, I totally don't remember. I mean, like
that's the thing you're supposed to remember.
Well, here's what I remember. So I remember the name of the speech was called My Family Dynasty. So the general theme of the speech was talking about myself, being first generation in my family to go to college and wanting to create like a new branch on our family tree as it relates to being able to, do something that hasn't yet been done before in my family. Toastmasters is what they call a mutually supportive and positive environment. So even if I would have completely bombed, like I said, I probably would have still got the standing ovation. But the thing that I realized, which is most important, and what most people realize during that first presentation, is that I did it. Like, you overcame your own fear, you overcame your own insecurities, and you just accomplished it. And the great thing about Toastmasters is that you actually get feedback along the way. And so after each presentation, you get an evaluation, which if there was any magic moment for me, it probably wasn't in the speech. It was probably in the evaluation, because when you get the evaluation, you realize like, oh, here's some things I did really well. You had a nice opening, you had stage presence, you hear all these different things. And then it's like, hey, here's 2 or 3 things, Kimberly, you can work on for next time. But overall, here's what we love. And so you constantly get that back and forth of encouragement with support / feedback, constructive feedback, and then you're able to go on. So that would be, I think, the thing that was the hallmark more so than the speech itself. Like, I have no idea what I said.
Because like you said, you're too busy trying to get over the hump. But like you said, at least it gave you the opportunity to get over the fear, and the wondering of how did I sound and what did I do. And I like the fact that Toastmasters does give you that feedback, because the feedback is important. And even though sometimes we don't want to hear what people may have to say, but that's the purpose and that's the reason why you were there. And so you've taken what you have learned throughout the years, and here you have made your own business and starting in 2016, and you are a major influence in this industry. And talk a little bit about that journey, a little bit more from the time that you had stepped away from, you got out of college, you got your degree from Morgan State, and you moved on. Let's talk a little bit more about that journey.
Yeah. So, one thing that I should point out is that, I was one of those kids that sat on the floor and would watch television. And remember how they would televise the NASA space shuttle launches back in the day? So I was that kid that watched that. And, my goal was to be a part of that team. So I wanted to be, my entire career ambition was to be an engineer, but not just a regular engineer. I wanted to be an aerospace engineer. So I literally wanted to be a rocket scientist, right? And so my journey and path, the reason I ended up at Morgan State University is because it's one of the top engineering schools in the country. And certainly the top HBCU. I think they're credited with producing more Black engineers than any other institution in the country. And so I was like, yes, Morgan. But problem is, Morgan State University was in Baltimore, and I actually went to high school across the street from Morgan. I was like, I do not want to go across the street. Like, I want to go away from home, but then I ended up getting a scholarship to go to a 2-year school. And then that 2-year scholarship turned into a 4-year scholarship. So it just made economic sense. But the journey took me there, even though I didn't graduate with an engineering degree. I graduated with a business degree. Reason I graduated a business degree is because of a little class called Calculus 2 Differential Equations, where I realized, let me just go see what the School of Business is talking about, because I've been trying to take this test for 30 minutes. I literally don't have anything on the paper. And so I kind of found myself at a crossroads in my senior year because I'd switched majors. Common story for a lot of people, but I had no true life direction anymore in terms of what I really wanted to do. And so when I found Toastmasters, that was great because I realized I tapped into this passion for speaking, but I had no idea that there was a professional speaking industry. I had no idea that there was an information marketing industry and that people can take content and ideas out of their head, package it into a physical, digital product or service, and then sell that. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. And so shortly after college, I started researching and trying to seek out like different speaker organizations, and then I ran across a few. The thing that was disappointing to me was going to some meetings or trying to do research, and I just saw such a lack of representation in a lot of the spaces that I was showing up. Both racial as well as gender diversity. And so I was like, okay, I'm coming from HBCU, and I witnessed, Kimberly, every single week the amount of talent and passion and knowledge that people have. But same thing like me, they just didn't realize that speaking was even an industry. And so I got into corporate America. Like I said, I started off in more of a finance role, was not passionate about it at all. But my dream job was to be a corporate training professional, a trainer. I want to be the person in front of the classroom, dropping knowledge on people. And so I did that. I eventually, I think I got promoted like in 2012. And so I achieved my dream of being a full-time corporate trainer. And so I was responsible for doing things like new hire orientation. I was doing technology training, all types of good stuff. I was traveling, super cool. And I decided also to go back to school to actually learn what happens behind the scenes with training. So I started studying instructional design and adult learning. So there were all these different things that were starting to come together over the course of many, many years that I didn't even realize was leading up to the birth of what would become Black Speakers Network.
Right. And that's usually how it works, because like you said, you had your dreams, but that was not the path that was really set for you. So I think it's amazing how once we start to do things, we really can start to see the vision start to come together. And I love how you took all these different steps in order to make the business that you developed really come true, because it does take a lot. It's not just about going out there and saying, oh, I'm the greatest speaker, and the next thing I'm going to do is just open my doors and everybody's going to come. So I love that you had to learn what it took to be that, even though you were good at your speaking, but to be, to bring that streamline and have that clarity of what it really truly means to be a professional speaker, being that there is a true industry out there for that. So with your business, talk about what is it that you provide and at the BSN, the network, for all these different speakers, because I know that you say that you have different levels. There's people come in at all different levels. So talk a little bit about some of the steps in the process that you take with this business.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I recognized really early on, Kimberly, is that when it comes to speaking, I wanted to create an organization where there was really virtually no barrier of entry to get involved. And so just like you mentioned, you hit the nail right on the head. Like, there are so many different paths to success in this business. And truly, when you really deconstruct it, when we use the term speaker, I keep forgetting that I'm on the radio because I'm using like air quotes, but imagine me doing air quotes. Like, when you use the term speaker, that could mean if you ask 10 different people, they may give you 10 different answers as it relates to what success looks like to them. To some people, that's more of like the Les Brown, the Tony Robbins, like core motivational speaker. To some other people, you're a corporate trainer and you are, working in an organization, or you're doing federal contracting. To some other people, you're a professional master of ceremony, or you host webinars, or you host your own events. So there are so many different ways to effectively categorize this thing as speaking. And so one of the first things we had to do is figure out, okay, who are we really truly serving? And if we're going to serve the vast majority of speakers, we need to figure out a way to level set and create a model to essentially help everyone kind of self-assess where they are and be able to build an effective business. And so we came up with this model called the 5Ms. And so for us, it's and we can revisit this in more detail later if you like, but it's helping every speaker that comes through our doors, our virtual doors, get clarity on their mission, your message, your marketing, how to monetize your speaking business, and then the management of your speaking business. And so what we do as a membership organization, as you mentioned before, our focus is to equip, connect, and inspire the next generation of Black professional speaker. And so if you dissect each of those three words in our mission statement, equip is, of course, providing training, education, and resources. And so most speakers kind of just fall into the industry. They may have started speaking in college, or somebody asked them to do a presentation at work, or, as just a natural marketing channel. If they're entrepreneurs, started going to things like Chamber of Commerce and, just started speaking, not really with a core strategy behind it. So there's a lot of gaps in education as it relates to how to make money as a speaker. How do you position yourself in the marketplace? What do you charge? How do you, what resources do you need? Speaker video, website, one sheet, headshots, all those different things. And so big piece is education. The second piece is connect. And so as a speakers network, we seek to bring together not just a community of speakers, but also a community of meeting planners, other speakers who are hosting events, both in person and virtual, just like what you have here on this amazing platform, Kimberly, your Resource to Success podcast, virtual meetings, like things where speakers can, again, connect with the audience that they're called to serve, is amazing. And so that's one thing. Or the second thing, the other type of community that we're seeking to connect is a community of entrepreneurs that provide services for speakers. And so photographers, videographers, website designers, etc. So you got equip, connect, and then the last piece of the mission is to inspire. And so recognizing, just like any other type of entrepreneurship, if you're a speaker, you're basically an entrepreneur, and you're kind of putting this together. And the thing, what do we know about entrepreneurship? It's hard. It's
Exactly.
Lonely.
Yes.
It's expensive. Every single day, like every flaw that you ever had in your life is put up for the entire world to see. So we want to equip and connect, but we also want to celebrate a lot of the accomplishments of the individuals in our network. And those don't have to be like six-figure accomplishments. Like if you just had your first paid speaking engagement, if you just wrote your first book, if you just booked your first podcast, we want to celebrate those things so that people, that are right below you can be inspired, and then the people right above you can continue to pull you up. And so those are the main three. That's really the ethos and the heart of our organization, so to speak. And then from a practical perspective, as you mentioned, we are a membership-based organization. And so really there's two levels of membership currently. There's, you can basically be on our email list, and we keep you updated for resources and stuff like that. And that's free. Or you could be what's called a BSN premium member. It's $15 a month or $150 per year. And with that, we are doing things to ensure that you are increasing your visibility in the space. So we're doing things like adding you to our speakers directory. We're sending you speaker leads on a weekly basis, making sure you have access to our training resources, and connect you into a more intimate community for you to connect and network with. So that's kind of how we're structured right now.
Wow. Well, I have to tell you, your structure is phenomenal. And the thing I love that you talked about is how being a speaker is not just about standing up on a platform and telling your story. It's so many different pieces. I like how you talked about the fact that it's doing a podcast show. Like I said, you could be a trainer in an environment, working in regular working environment. There's so many different processes of understanding what that means. But the biggest thing that stood out to me was the education that you guys provide. And then when you sit here and tell me that it's $15 a month, $150 a year to get access to all of this.
Yep, that's correct.
So you see, I'm pausing, right? 'Cause that is almost, unknown to think that you can get something as for that little price, to know that you can get that educated and qualified to better yourself as a speaker, no matter what it is that you're doing. And I think that's amazing. And I definitely want to be able to share this even more, because I hadn't had the opportunity to really get to talk to you prior. But the one thing that we did talk a little bit about before we came on the show is that you were telling me earlier that you had, was it 75% of the people who are a part of your network are women based, right?
Yeah, between 70 to 75%. It goes up and down, but yeah, about three quarters. Yep.
And let me ask you a quick question on that. And we, as we talk to my listeners, I just want to explain, I always talk to my guests before we get onto the show. And one of the major questions that we kind of communicated about, me and my guest here, Brian, talked about the fact that women are really constantly moving up in the industry, no matter what that type of industry is, and when it comes to opening up businesses. And so the thing that my question to you is, even though you have this amazing network and you obviously do have men and women, why do you think that men are still, behind in when it comes to opening up their businesses and trying to be a part of something as amazing as this that you have, that you offer?
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, one of our members, great guy named Reginald Gant, him and his wife are like the Michelle and Barack Obama of the emerging speaking realm. Like, she's like an HR guru, and he has this amazing passion for serving and supporting men and creating strong families where men, Black men in particular, are equipped with the tools and resources to effectively lead their households. Mm-hmm. And so we talk about this all the time. He actually has an event coming up here in the next few days. And it's interesting because earlier this morning, I was talking to the host of the person that owns the event center where that event is taking place that he's hosting. And she's like, I don't understand why more people aren't signed up for this. And I was like, well, yeah, it's interesting because from my perspective, men tend to, and by and large, have this kind of lone wolf mentality where women are much more collaborative. I'm speaking in the broadest of broad strokes right now. Mm-hmm. But that's what I've seen. And so, with women, it's so interesting because with NBSN, like you said, it's like 70% women now. And so a lot of our speakers host events. And so I get invited to things all the time, our empowerment brunches, workshops, women's retreats, and some stuff I'm invited to, some stuff I'm not invited to, but I see kind of what they're doing. I see the response rate. I see the engagement. I see how they encourage each other, on social media. I see how they interact with each other in person. Like, they are truly making sure that they are, supporting each other. And so I think that element is just kind of missing for men. Men are definitely, in general, operate with a lot more ego and tend to be less collaborative. But, when we do have something, then we're able to execute, really, really quickly, and tend to not be as, bogged down by some of the things that, may distract women. But I love it when you kind of have both. But I think, men typically don't respond to things like this. When I say this, I mean BSN, like a network, a collaborative community, at the same rate that women do. Now, that being said, the men in our organization are absolutely crushing it. Like, I got like 10 people right now, 10 men that I could call on the phone at pretty much any time of day for just about anything. And they would be absolutely incredible. And so I think, it just takes, it's just a difference and how we are socialized a little bit from a U.S. perspective anyway. And also, Kimberly, you mentioned something very important, I think, too, as it relates to, or before the show started, which was some of the things that we're seeing reflected in the entrepreneurship landscape. And the fact that women are starting businesses at a higher clip is absolutely reflective of what's happening in the corporate arena. And so you see men are staying in their careers, getting promoted. There's still a huge pay disparity on the corporate side and the federal government side and sports, pretty much everything between men and women. And so, like you said earlier, if women aren't finding success in those in some of those other traditional vehicles, then they're going to be the ones that start businesses at a higher clip and are collaborating, succeeding at a higher clip because they weren't embraced on the other side. So those are just some of the reasons I see, but I think we could probably do a whole show
on this, right?
On
Exactly. But, I just always like to, when I see a young Black man like you, doing the things that you're doing, I think it's phenomenal. And we don't get an opportunity to praise our men enough. And I always like to have that understanding because, like you said, men do obviously have more opportunity because the world we live in was all about men. And as women are constantly continuing to grow and constantly continue to do for themselves, it would still be great to be able to see more of that collaborative effort between men and women doing the business entrepreneurship. Like I said, it's not always just the one or the other, but it's still a process, and things are still growing. But, we are definitely making our strides and, we decided, hey, we got to step out here and do what we need to do. And we've always, I think as women have been that, for our families, no matter what, we do what we always have to do. And that's the strength of women. And, we continue to pat ourselves on the back because that's because we can no longer wait for others to do that for us. But the type of business that you have, I think it's phenomenal. And I'm just ecstatic and very appreciative of you being able to come on my show and talk to me about what you offer, because I have definitely been missing out. And I know there's many other men and women who are currently listening to the show tonight who have been missing out. So if you've been missing out, I'm going to let Mr. Brian J. Olds here tell you how you can reach out to him and how you can learn more about the Black Speakers Network.
Yeah. So again, Kimberly, this has been amazing. I am absolutely so appreciative of the platform that you've built here. And I'm at your service for this and anything beyond, as well as your listeners. Connecting with Black Speakers Network is super easy. You can find us. We're Black Speakers Network on everything, social media wise. BlackSpeakersNetwork.com, of course, is our home base, and that's Black Speakers with an S, network.com. In addition to that, we, if folks are on Facebook, we have a publicly facing Facebook group with about 8,000 to 9,000 people at the time of this show. And so I invite you to be a part of that community. We have a question of the day where, speakers, we're constantly sharing about speaker best practices. So you learn things about not just speaking itself, but, we talk about all types of things. Like, one of the things we talked about today was filler words. And so everyone was sharing their most dreaded filler words, the ahs, like, no's, but, so's. And it's just a cool way to be able to connect and share some of the common struggles. We talk about, hey, what are some of your favorite ways to open a presentation? We share speaker videos. We share events that we have coming up. We share success stories. So I think that's a great community. And again, that's a free resource that's available to you. And then if folks are wanting to take that next step, and if you're actively building a speaking business, then, we'll 100% love to have you as part of the speaker community. And Kimberly, to your point earlier, one of the reasons why it's $15 per month, and that may, it may go up, a little bit, but again, we wanted to lower the barrier of entry. But certainly, anybody that's building a speaking business, there are going to be things that you're naturally going to have to invest in anyway.
Right.
Like you're not getting a website for $15. You're not getting a professionally edited bio for $15. You're not, hiring a virtual assistant or getting an email marketing system. Like, so our goal is to kind of get you in and make sure that we're charging just enough to be able to provide some of those basic things. And then for the people that, depending on where you are in your speaking business, our goal is to kind of meet you where you are and give you those resources as needed without trying to overcharge for stuff that you're not even necessarily going to use. So that's kind of the mindset behind the pricing of the membership. But certainly would love to have anybody that is looking to connect with an audience that they've been waiting on.
All right. Well, that, like I said, that's still an amazing price, because even with just the items that you do provide, like I said, everybody's at a different level, but still, there's a lot of organizations that will normally take that and triple and double and the whole 9 yards just in order to get people, the people they feel that can come in and be served or can afford it, but like I said, I think that what you're offering is amazing. And for those who are listening, again, this is Brian J. Olds with Black Speakers Network, BSN. You can find the website at www.blackspeakersnetwork.com. And like you said, they do have their Facebook business pages available on all social media platforms. It's very easy to find. Please reach out if you have any questions to him directly. But if you are truly trying to build a business as a speaker, no matter what that's doing, what I'm doing as a podcast show, or you're trying to get on other people's platforms, or you're trying to just build your own business in a certain way, this is a great opportunity and a good way to learn it the right way. And that's the key. It's one thing to come out and speak, but it's another thing to do it properly. So support Brian J. Olds' business, because it is definitely well-deserved. And again, I thank you, sir, for being on my platform with me this evening. I know you're extremely busy, but before you leave out this evening, do you have any last words for my listeners?
Yeah, so I think so earlier this year, we came out with a book called Speak Up, The Ultimate Guide to Dominate the Speaking Industry. And the reason why we call the book Speak Up, Kimberly, is that our tagline within the company is speak up, your audience awaits. And so I mentioned in the beginning of the story, sweaty palms, shaking voice, and almost walking out of the room. And so often people are very familiar with the phrase when you're speaking, you know how they say you got the butterflies in your stomach? So I think there's a misconception about speaking as well as entrepreneurship that, you get to a certain point where, the butterflies just aren't there. Like you're not scared, you're not nervous, you don't have any anxiety. And I just I'm actually on a campaign to dispel that myth, because, what we're not talking about trying to remove fear. What we're talking about is taking action on something that you believe in your heart. And everybody that started their speaking journey started because they knew that they had a message, something important to say. They had an audience that they authentically cared about, and they had a process to be able to solve a problem for that audience. And that audience doesn't need to be millions and millions of people. But whoever that audience is, you're called to serve them. And so fear of speaking, fear of stepping out, fear of having your voice be heard is not something that you should allow to hold you back. And so that's the reason why we adopted the term speak up, your audience awaits, because truly, you may have those butterflies flying in your stomach, but after enough time, they will still be there, but you just eventually learn how to get the butterflies to fly in formation. And that's what we're about at BSN. So definitely excited to connect with everyone. And Kimberly, you've certainly got your butterflies flying in formation. I am incredibly impressed with your consistent voice for years, creating this platform and making sure that people have access to thought leaders to be able to move their vision forward and to succeed. So thank you for being that as well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And again, like I said, listeners, this has been Brian J. Olds. He is the CEO and founder of the Black Speakers Network, Please reach out to him if you're looking to get your business up to the next level as an entrepreneur. But for everyone else, as you know, I'm here every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. We are on iHeartRadio, we're on Spotify, and we are on so many other new platforms, which I will be sharing with you later on this week, the rest of this week, and over the weekend, because we're growing tremendously. But if you are interested in being on this show in 2020, all you need to do is send me a very quick email with a short bio, a picture, and your business logo to Kimberly@WSBILLC.com. Until next time, you all enjoy your evening. Good night.
Good night, everyone. We will be back next Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Follow us on Spreaker, www.spreaker.com/user/WSBI. View our new WSBI website anytime at www.WSBILLC.com and on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram.